It is a fact that if you are going to have free will, you're going to have to choose between right and wrong, between good and evil. To remove free will is to remove that ability to choose. It isn't necessarily to make us robots, but it is in some sense to make us inhuman. In fact, what do we call people who don't have the ability to choose right from wrong? We call them psychopaths or sociopaths.
No, we fucking don't. Psychopathy and sociopathy are not defined as the inability to choose between right and wrong or good and evil. It's the inability to empathize, which makes psychopaths unable to care about the morality or immorality of their actions. Suppose a person had no ability to choose between good and evil because they had such strong empathy that they were psychologically incapable of choosing evil. Such a person would be the exact opposite of a psychopath. D'Souza seems to think that such a person is somehow inhuman, but if only ever being able to do what is best without ever even being tempted to do anything wrong is inhuman, then to hell with being human. Why would anyone prefer to be human?
I'll come back and talk about the issue of free will in heaven, but in general, the argument that moral evil can be explained as a result of God creating us in His image, which is to say free like Him, in some senses co-creators of circumstances in the universe. And that allows us to do some terrible things to each other.
We're told that Yahweh is the greatest conceivable being. If we are free like Him, that would mean that Yahweh is free to do evil, just as we are. It would mean that Yahweh doing evil is conceivable. If you can conceive of a being doing evil, then such a being is not the greatest conceivable being.
But then Barth rightly says that that's not the end of the story, because you do have terrible things that happen that human beings had nothing to do with. Tsunamis, hurricanes, natural suffering that seems to come out of, you might say, the laws of nature. And in some ways, Barth says if God is omnipotent, He could intervene. In fact, you might raise the question, why have laws of nature in the first place? No laws of nature, no hurricanes, no tsunamis, no earthquakes. Why did God create a lawful universe? Actually, there are some people who think He didn't. The Muslim scholar Al-Ghazali says there are no laws. God intervenes at every second to make things happen as they do. In some senses, the alternative to a lawful universe is, you might say, a discretionary universe. Everything happens because God wills it. And it doesn't have to happen the same way twice. So if you drop a pen, it goes to the ground, but the next time you drop it, it goes right up. That would be a whimsical universe, unpredictable. Now, try to think about this, because Barth said, free will cannot be used to defend against natural evil. I insist that it can. Because in a whimsical universe, human action would have no predictable consequence. If I were to pull out a gun to shoot you, God could block the bullet.
Yes, but doing that would stop human evil. That's not the same as intervening to stop a natural disaster. If Yahweh wants us to act freely and He wants our actions to have consequences, how is that in any way undermined by intervening to prevent suffering only in cases that are not consequences of human action? How does intervening to stop an earthquake prevent human actions from having consequences?
But to my understanding, these miracles, by and large, are aimed at, you might say, spiritual benefits, and not to contravene the laws of nature for their own sake. In other words, God parts the Red Sea for the Israelites to cross. Jesus heals the blind man, but He doesn't heal blindness. The purpose is conversion. It's spiritual. There is a contravention of a law of nature, but it's occasional. It's rare, and it's done for a spiritual purpose.
How was parting the Red Sea done for the purpose of conversion? Whom was He trying to convert? Did the Israelites not already believe in Yahweh? Was He trying to convert the Egyptians? If miracles are just for the purpose of conversion, then why doesn't He pull off one big worldwide miracle that converts everyone? Why create a miracle that, for example, is invisible to everyone except the people within a few kilometers of Fatima, Portugal? Again, you may use the cop-out that I don't know enough to question the intentions of Yahweh, but then you're really just giving up on trying to give a rational explanation of what those intentions actually are. And why would a loving God only intervene for spiritual purposes rather than to prevent thousands of deaths?
Why do we have earthquakes? The reason we have earthquakes, and by the way, this is not an argument from the Bible, this is an argument from geology. The reason we have earthquakes is underneath the earth are massive tectonic plates that move. And these tectonic plates, it turns out, are absolute prerequisites for life on earth to exist.
So your supposedly omnipotent God can't create or sustain life without tectonic plates? If he's really omnipotent, why couldn't he just speak us into existence, which is how we are told he created the universe, instead of relying on an evolutionary process that requires all of these precisely calibrated settings? D'Souza goes on to make the fine-tuning argument, which is pretty tangential to the topic at hand. Also, it doesn't answer the challenge of why suffering exists. Even if it were the case that this all-powerful God somehow doesn't have the power to create life without permitting earthquakes, why can't this God create humans that are earthquake-proof? Why did he make cockroaches and tardigrades so good at surviving harsh conditions, but not humans? I suppose it's because he can't for some reason. Some reason that we're supposed to believe somehow avoids contradicting the idea that he's all-powerful.
You mean God could not create a world without tectonic plates? There have to be tsunamis that kill 300,000 people? Really? There have to be? You're telling me that God couldn't do something different? God couldn't dream up a world without tectonic plates? How limited is God? Is God so limited that he could not create a world without earthquakes and hurricanes and tsunamis and droughts? Is that really the case, that God couldn't do it? If that's what you think, then I would say you're probably leaning more toward my direction. I don't believe that, in fact, there could be a God who causes suffering or allows suffering if he could prevent it. And I don't believe if there was an all-powerful God in the world that, in fact, you could say that he can't prevent it.